Welcome back. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe. This is going to be a fun video for me. I'm building the rest of my brake system for the buggy. You've already seen I've got dual master cylinders, and I did something different than a lot of people do, but I'm not the first one to do it, so this is not my own invention. But I'm using two separate brake pedals. One for the fronts, one for the rears. That way I don't need handheld cutout brakes. If you're not doing two brake pedals and you're going to use the Wilwood larger bore master cylinders, which I've done, you can get what's called a balance bar, and you can adjust that balance bar so it engages one master cylinder before the other. The guys that are doing more racing type things, that's more applicable to them because you will want one set to engage slightly before the other. So we're not going to focus much on that other than bleeding them out. We're mostly going to be focusing on what goes on the knuckle and hub, meaning calipers, rotors. Now I've already gone down to my local hose builder and had them build some brake lines. I have estimated within probably pretty close of what exactly I need for the flexible portions. Then I went down and bought some hard lines and have bent those all myself, which I will show you momentarily. Any place where you have non-rigid movement, where my truss meets my links, I have a soft line. Where the master cylinders go into the chassis, I have a soft line. Obviously a soft line where your steering knuckle is turning. But I did something, a lot of the guys run soft lines all the way back now because of the control arms. You know, you're only gaining a couple feet there, you're gaining a couple feet here for hard lines, but I like putting some hard line in wherever I can because it firms up the brake pedal. You tend to have less expansion than you would on a hose. Now these DOT approved stainless lines that are braided, inner cord and then outer covered, you can get away without running any hard line with those, but if you're running rubber lines or the rubber-ish lines, those have the tendency to expand when you hit the brake pedal. So I want a good firm brake pedal, so I went ahead and did as much hard line as I could, plus I did a real high quality brake line. Now these are Spider Track knuckles. So I've got an adapter piece that Spider Track sells, and then I contacted Wilwood for brake calipers. Whole bunch of brake work, but my wheels and tires came in for this buggy, so I'm going to go ahead and mount these tires. That way I can make sure everything fits as I'm doing these brakes on the final assembly. So, ooh, cool factor showed up. Just delivered some stuff. For me, I just had to have a process to mounting tires on bead locks. I used soapy water to get the inner bead started and popped on the rim. Then I put the lock ring on, and these particular ones do have a spacer because the bead's thick. I start all the bolts by hand. I also put grease on all the threads, which does two things. Helps reduce corrosion and gives them a better torque ability with a torque wrench. I snug all the bolts down first, then I use the torque wrench. Once I'm done with that, ready to install. And now, back to brakes. Master cylinders I've already installed once, so I know absolutely they do fit. I will have to make a couple of minor adjustments, I'm sure, to make sure the pedals are at the correct height once I'm in it. Now I've got the brake pedals set here. Now I can adjust the height of them, make them the exact same height, or make one a little lower if I want. I can also move the pads to the left. Now I've got this one set as far to the right as I can go, and I've got this one set right in the middle. That gives me a 1/4 inch between them. Now, Depending on where my gas pedal lands, I may move this one over, I may move this one to the center, or I may move them both to the center if I don't like them this close. But for now, this is kind of where my brain thinks I'm gonna want. Next on these, I need to start running some lines. This is the splitter. Now I can hook there we go. Makes it easy to bend when you have a pipe handy. Hard lines run across the truss, just to the soft lines here. Soft line where it moves there. Soft line where it moves back there. And then it's hard line all the way up to the master cylinder. Decided to use some of this wire loom sheathing for my ARB lines, just as a way of helping to protect it from abrasions and things like that. Really don't want to lose air lockers on my rig from something silly like it's rubbing on a bracket. Airline covered. I use the brake line as the guide to zip line it to. It keeps everything tidy. Come up here and I just follow the same loops coming down, and on my front air locker coming back, same type of deal. Follow the hard lines all the way up. And this is the caliper I've chosen. This is a Willwood 4-piston universal style caliper, which will mate with my Spider Tracks weld-on mounts. Now, it's a 4-piston caliper, meaning there's 4 compression pistons that hydraulically squeeze with fluid, and this is a universal caliper. It's got bleeders on both ends so you can mount either side up. That way you can switch it from left to right. Now these are designed for a 13/14 inch rotor. From what Willwood told me, technically they don't have a specific caliper for a 14-inch rotors. The 13 and the 14 interchange. So don't get too hung up there. Another thing that I was noticing when you start doing research online is a lot of people and a lot of websites out there selling these brakes don't even show the 4-piston anymore. They're showing the 6-piston caliper. No, you can't have too much stopping ability, but once you're in excess by 3 or 4 times of adequate, it's probably not going to make any difference whether you have a 4-piston or a 6-piston caliper. From the technical guys at Willwood, a 4400 car running their 100-mile-an-hour across the California desert, this will stop the car just fine. That being said, I don't think I'll have an issue with my little rock crawler here. If you want 6-piston, jump on it. But based on the information I got from Willwood, going with this caliper versus the 6-piston, I saved myself about $500. Moving on to the rotors for this project, I have the hats, which these are a universal board hat. These fit over the wheel hub, and then a steel plate rotor bolts onto the hat with a 3/8 hex head bolt. I could not locate bolts that came flush, so mine stick out just a little. We'll see if I have any clearance issues. If I do, I can grind those down. Now, this is a 0.37 thick rotor. Willwood makes calipers for the narrow plate rotors. They also make them wide for like a conversion system if you were using a General Motors style rotor. Also, if you notice, these are not vented rotors. I don't think I'll have any issue with heat from high-speed braking. The fastest this buggy will probably go and be able to control is about 30 miles an hour. I'm more concerned I want a lot of surface area for those pads to grab. I think the solid plate rotor was a better choice for what I'm doing. I think either would work fine though. Next, the last part of this little configuration is the mounting plate. This mounting plate is designed to go straight up on top of this knuckle, just like that. Now, some systems you can put it at the front or rear. This one will go on top. What I don't know is if it will go on the edge or if it will go in. The only way to make that determination, I need to mount the rotor on the hub, I need to load pads in a caliper, and I need to set that caliper in place and bolt it to this adapter bracket and see where everything lands. At that point, then I can weld this together. This is a fairly simple process to figure out where your calipers need to go. I just snug the caliper down onto this plate, and I will actually use a wrench before I really do this, just to make sure they are tight. Once I have it mounted to the plate, I am just simply going to set the pads in the calipers. Pin them as such. When you install the rotor and the hats, make sure you bolt them down so that it sits flush against the hub, and that way you know it isn't out or in, because that would make a significant difference in how your mounting point would end up. Another thing that is a good idea to look at is run out. If it really has a problem or if something really doesn't feel right, put a dial indicator just like you would on a ring and pinion and run it around. Now, you can see I've got some play there. Now, I'm not positive, but I think I might, if I kick these back just a little bit, one side will be higher, or I can center them exactly with the knuckle. That I don't know yet. But because I have such a small gap there, I'm not going to bother using air. I'm going to use feeler gauges. This one's a little stiff. There we go. So I'm just gonna try to get somewhat close to the same thickness inside and out. Mostly I want to see where it's going to land. Now I'm going to have to wire wheel this paint off before I go further and tack weld that. We're back in, we're centered, the pads line up really nice. All I need to do is tack that in place. I think I'm going to set another set of gauges in there just to keep it from rocking. For the sake of consistency, take my square and center it on my knuckle, and then center it on the pin, and adjust the caliper so it's right in the middle. That way it's the same on all four wheels. I don't think it's going to be an issue if you are a tiny bit off. But this is right where I want to spot weld my plate. Once it's tacked, disassemble everything for a final weld. She's warm. Pretty comfortable with that. While I'm waiting for that side to cool, I'm going to assemble another caliper and bracket assembly. The bolt doesn't want to thread in, which tells me it was either miscut or something of that sort. So I'm going to take care of this and then reassemble. And I'm doing the same thing with this caliper as the other. Just a little side note while I'm taking this apart. You notice the bleeders are high, but one's not higher than the other. Realistically, once I fill this system with fluid, I'm going to take the caliper off and I am going to bring one of these bleeders to the highest point and make sure I've got all of the air out of it. Now another way you can do it is you can fill it up with fluid via pumping your master cylinder, and then you can recompress the calipers with those bleed holes high. But because where these are going to be required to mount, you're not going to be able to 100% make sure that all the air is out in this position. So basically, I will take the caliper off. I'll probably just throw one of the bolts in here, bleed it, and then move it back to its correct location. As usual, I go into overkill mode. I just kept thinking I've got weld on one side, but that would create a weakness if this thing were hit and could push it over. So I decided to drill a couple holes right on the seam from the knuckle to the adapter plate or mounting plate, and I'm just going to do a plug weld right there. Little reinforcement. Paint her up. Wash, rinse, and repeat, as they say. Same thing on the fronts. Now, I made one kind of a miscalculation, but not really. I split the difference on the space in the pads and centered my plate. Now, you've got to account for warpage when you're welding stuff, and I generally account for warpage, but what I didn't account for was, because I'm welding on just one side of this plate on a full-length weld, it tends to warp more one direction. Even though I did these plug welds on the other side, that's not enough to bring it back. So keep that in mind if you're doing this. You might want to add a couple more thousandths to the close clearance side. It still goes on fine. It's just there's more space on one side of the pad than the other, and the pistons will make up the difference for that. So there's really no issue, other than me being a little overcritical. Brakes are fully together. Now I haven't completely done everything. I'll end up having to take the wheels off again, I'm sure, to bleed them, or I'll be able to tilt the caliper up so that the bleeders, and I've got an inside and an outside bleeder that'll both have to be bled. I had to order these 90-degree fittings. I actually tried to see if a 90-degree crimped fitting, and it actually came out too close to the steer arm. So I ordered the 90-degree fittings, and I was gonna thought about 45s, but then after a couple of test fits, these 90s will really put the brake line where I want it. I use a little bit of Teflon pipe dope. To finish snugging this up or getting it to point the direction I want it, I actually threaded a 7/16 bolt into it to keep it from deforming as I set it where I needed to. Then I can take this bolt out and thread my line in. Go. I like it. I think that'll work. Now, I kind of like them going forward like this because when the wheel turns in and out, it'll push the line like this. It doesn't, if it were up straight, it would twist it and you would run the risk of the actual threads coming loose. So just one of my little personal observations, I guess. I decided it easier bleeding these to pull the calipers off and just set them leaning on the lines with the high spots up here. It's easier to clean brake fluid off of the floor than it is off all the knuckle and wheel. So this, I think, is a neater and cleaner way for your initial bleeding. And then I'll slide them back on as soon as we're done with that. Initially, I'm going to try to just do some gravity bleeding. I filled the master cylinder up and started pumping it with a line cracked until I started getting some fluid out. We'll give that a minute and see if it starts bubbling. Okay, it started gurgling, making sure both are up, and it's just about done on one side. Definitely want to give it enough time to get all the air out of the lines. The first one's going to draw any bubbles that are all the way downstream. So this one I'm going to let kind of drip on the ground for just a few before I clean it up. Should probably put a bucket under it, but it's okay. And then I'll clean the caliper and then I'll put the caliper back on. This caliper is the furthest away, so it's going to bring everything down from all the lines. When I go to do the other side on the same axle, it's only going to pull any air that's in the caliper or in that section of line, because the rest of the line will already be bled. So your first one's going to be your longest, most drawn out affair. Getting a pretty good stream of just fluid now. I'm bubbling right away because I've had the line open up here and it bled all the way down, so the fluid has already worked its way clear down the system. So I'm going to start this side on the hose side, and now it's open. Now I'll come over to the other side. With both of these bleeders at the top, I'm going to definitely get all of the air out. This one won't take very long. The other side took a little bit longer just because you had to let more of the line flow through to verify that you had all the air out from the master cylinder all the way down. On this side, it's just bleeding what was left in the air, and I'm pretty consistent already. I don't have any more air bubbles popping up. Let that dry a few minutes before I slide the caliper back on, run around to the other side and do the fronts. Now that I've done this on all four corners, slide my calipers back on, and I'm not putting the bolts in yet, but just putting the calipers over the rotor. That way, the rotor will keep the pads from squishing when I pump the brake pedal up. Now, once I pump the brake pedal up, I want to see if it's mushy at all, if I got a good hard pedal, and then I'm going to pull this back off, and I'm going to just do one final bleed, make sure I don't have any residual air in the system, which should be worked out to this point by now. Now, I had a pretty decent pedal, but it did work some air back into this caliper, so now I'm just letting it kind of slowly do gravity bleed on. I'll start with this one, and then I'll go to the other top bleeder and verify all my air is out of there. And the same thing there, got a little bit of air purging. And now we're back to a nice clean stream of fluid. So theoretically, I should be done completely with this one. I'll move to the next one, and I should be able to reinstall all my calipers one at a time and have a good pedal now. Last step, topped off the master cylinders, put the covers back on, and tested my pedals. I got really nice, strong pedals here. I'm sure I will have to adjust the rods a little bit or spring load them so that they return my switch a little easier. But other than that, I think this will fly. As a little afterthought, I added this switch, which is behind the steering wheel. It's basically a manual line lock. I can push the brake pedal, push the button, and it locks the fluid into those calipers. Now, I decided to put this switch in because I have had parking pawls, and in this particular buggy, I questioned the parking pawl engagement lever, so we'll see how that goes. But I've had parking pawls not hold 100%, and they'll click and ratchet until they find a solid spot. And I don't want to rely on the parking pawl to keep this buggy in one spot if I'm in a precarious situation and have to park it. I always try to park it where I could leave it neutral and it won't roll anywhere, you know, get it rolled up against a rock or something like that. But in a lot of cases, you might find yourself where you need to lock up the brakes and not be in the vehicle, using a winch, something like that. And I decided to go ahead and put this switch going to the rear brakes. To do that, I have two lines, one in and one out of the switch. The in line comes from the master cylinder for the rear brakes. The out line goes back to this line where it goes to the rear. Now I ran these lines clear up and tap them in to the point where if something fails on this switch or a line ruptures, I can remove that line and reinstall it in the master cylinder, bleed it, and I'm back to my normal brakes. I just thought this was a good safety feature when we're talking about brakes and plumbing those brakes. That's going to do it for this video. If you have comments or questions about these Willwood brakes I have done, throw it in the comments. I am happy to answer anything I can. And thanks for watching. This never works out well for me. Mine just doesn't have the right travel in the right place to do that obstacle that way. That's going to come right over. Turn driver, go. Made it easy.
Yep. Stay just like that. Your back will stay. Yep, keep going.